Everyone, I've been getting some questions about the truth table part of this logic unit, and I just wanted to maybe see if we can look at it a little bit more in somebody else's words, which are mine, which I hope can help. So we'll give it a go. Truth tables. Truth tables are just organized ways of deciding if statements, logic statements, or logic clauses are true or not true. And the example that we're showing here was one that was sent to me saying, I don't know what to do with this. How do you figure this out? So let's see if we can simplify the process. There's really kind of, I would say, two important things that if you can remember, you can kind of get these cold. So let's go back to basics a little bit. So let's think about two statements P and Q, and we've used this before. P can represent any sort of statement, Q can represent any sort of statement. P could be, it's a nice day. Q could be, I will watch TV. I don't know. Anything you want, right? These can be statements. So we just use P and Q to represent different sorts of conditions that could be going on. They can be true or they can be false. That's the only possibilities we have in the world of logic. So we're building these little tables to help us really just think out what could happen. So let's make this a table. It could be that P is true and Q is true at the same time. That could happen. It could happen that one is true and the other isn't. So maybe this is true and this is false, or maybe the first one was false and this one was true. And we could also have that they're both false. So that's the only things that can happen. They're both true. The first one's true, the second is false. The first one's false, the second is true, or they're both false. Those are the things that can happen. So what happens in the case where they are both true at the same time? So we're talking about things at the same time. That's an and situation. And if you remember the symbol that we use, it's that kind of upside down V looking thing. Things will be true in an and situation only if both of those conditions are true. Because if one of them was false, the whole thing will be false. This says that P and Q have to happen at the same time. They both have to be true at the same time. So if you have P true and you have Q true, let me see if I can put that in another color. I don't know if that makes it better or not, but we'll try it. So if they are both true, you have a true if it's an and. Now let's think about the situation where it's an or. So let's go this way. Or. P or Q, that was the right way around V. So what does that mean? We'll try a different color for that one. If something is true or the other thing is true, one or the other must be true. They don't both have to be true, they could be. So if P is true and Q is true, one or the other is true, so that one becomes true. So that's kind of easy, sort of. If it's true, they're both true, then when you and them together, it will be true. When you or them together, it will be true. Let's go down to look at what happens when they're false, because I think that's the other easy-ish case. If something is false and the other thing is false, can we agree that the whole thing must be false? Right? Two things are false and you and them together. They're not true at the same time, they're both false. And also when you think about the or situation, if something is false or it's false, it's false. I think those two cases are the easy ones. But what happens if one is true and the other isn't? So let me go back to my and color. So I'm going to stay with and. And remember, and is they both have to be true at the same time for the whole thing anded together to be true. If one is true here and this one is false, it doesn't matter that this one is true, because if this one is false, the whole thing becomes false because they're both not true at the same time. So a true and a false is a false. And it doesn't matter which order. So let's say the Q was the true and the P was the false. It's still, they're both not true at the same time. So when you're with an and, the big takeaway is the only way you get truth with an and is if both P and Q are true at the same time. So there's only one place where that happens. Maybe highlight where that situation is. Now when you're with an or, it's one or the other. Has to be true for the thing to be true. Trying to think of an example where one is true and the other isn't. If I have a cat or I don't have a cat, do a thing. So it's going to be one or the other. Either you have a cat or you don't. But if you do, in the one situation where you do, then the whole statement becomes true. So true or false, as long as one of them is true. I do have a cat, so it's true. Doesn't matter that this one's false, right? It's going to be a true statement. Or if I say if you have a cat or you have a dog, then you have a pet, right? If both are true, if you have a cat or you have a dog, both those statements are true, then yeah, you have a pet. But just think about one of them being true. What if you only have a cat? Do you still have a pet? Of course you do. Now think about the and situation. If you have a cat and you have a dog, that's the only way you can have a pet, which doesn't make sense. But that way, if one of those was false, it doesn't work. I know this is confusing. I don't think I'm helping the matter, but I'm trying. A true or a false is true. And it doesn't matter which one's true and which one's false. If this one was false and this one was true, so in the case of if you have a cat or you have a dog, what if you only have a dog? Do you still have a pet? Yeah, you do. The takeaway with this one was the only way it's false is if they're both false. So you will have trues with ors as long as at least one of the clauses is true. And this is the thing you're going to have to think about a little bit for this to make sense, because I think this is the root of it. When you have an and, both things need to be true to get a true, otherwise everything is false. And if you have an or, everything will be true unless both of the items are false. Then we complicate things by putting in the not symbol. So if you remember how not works, it just takes the opposite. So basically what a table says, it says, hey, what's P? P is true. What happens if you take a not in front of it? It becomes opposite. So go back to the original P. It's true here. Take the not of it. What's this one? It's false. Take the not. It's false. Take the not. Take the opposite. So let's see what we have here if I say, what about a not P or a Q? If I have a not P or a Q, I want to find the column that's not P. So let me highlight this column. And I also want to find the Q column. What happened to my Q? There it is. There it is. So those are the two columns I'm going to OR together. I'm going to OR them. And the only way an OR becomes false is if they're both false. So I'm looking at my first, not P, it's false. So I need to know what Q is. So if I can go over and look at Q in this column, a false or a true will be true, sorry. A false or a false, well, that's my only false condition. Now these are both true. So because one of them is true for sure, I almost don't even care what the other one is. What about if I wanted not P and Q? So again, I'm going to look at my not P column, and with an and, I need them both to be true for this to be true. So wherever I see a false, then that one has to be a false, right? Because a false and anything will be false. A false and anything will be false. Now here's a true. The only way that this becomes true is if Q is true. So let me see what the match is over here. It's a true and a true. So that one's true. And this one, it's true. Let's see what's the matches. It's a true and a false, and that's false. So if I go back up here, if they had not filled in like this part yet, if we didn't know those answers, right? We're given P, we're given Q, and we have R. So now I've got three things. So let me get rid of my squiggles here. I hope that comes back. Good. What does this mean? I've got a P, a Q, and an R. So a P and a Q, P or a Q rather, or I just look at these two columns then. Those are the only ones I'm interested for my OR. And the only way that this becomes false is if they're both false. So a true or a true is true, right? True, true gives me a true. Anything with a true in it will be true. Anything with a true in it will be true. So these all have at least one true in them. But these are two falses, and that's why these come out false. So we figure that P or Q out. So now I've got a P or Q and an R. So I'm going to treat this P or Q just by looking at the one column here. So let me just look at this one column here. So that's this part. Put it back with this. And then the R. So I'm comparing these two columns. Put my highlight here as well. And I'm comparing them with an and. And for an and, Both being true gives me true, otherwise they become false. So true and a true is a true. A true and a false is false. True and a true is true. True and a false is false. True and a true is true. This has a false in it. This has a false in it. These are both false. So if you can sort of combine the columns so that you're only really comparing two things, I think that's what makes it easier. And I have no idea if this helped at all. To me, the big deal is remembering what the and means and what the or means. And I hope this helps. Please email me if you're still having trouble with it, and what specifically the area is, and then maybe I can give you some assistance again. But I hope this helps. Give it a try. Don't give up. You can totally do this. Thanks for watching.